Okay, here we go. You're on.
All right, so last summer, I was really honored and really fortunate that a friend of mine who has a lot of frequent flyer miles offered to give me a round-trip ticket to go to the European Rainbow Gathering. And I had never been to Europe, and I'd only traveled to a foreign country off this continent once before, to Haiti, 5 years ago to visit my daughter. She was working down there at Hospital Albert Schweitzer. So I was really excited, and the gathering was held way up in northeastern Italian Alps, and the closest town was called Tremonti di Sopra. And it was a very, very remote site. 2.5 day hike in on a treacherous mountaineering trail that you would not dare go on when it's wet. There's really some very deep drops if if your foot slipped. So
Oh, you told me that the townspeople put up a sign.
they put up a sign.
Yeah, didn't you tell me something about boys and girls?
Oh yeah, the townspeople love this there. At the little grocery store in the town, they had a sign, "Welcome, Rainbow Boys and Girls. Come in and sign our guest book." And the store owner just loved us. She was so excited to have us there. And at the post office, they had a map and a guest book to sign. So you could put a dot where you came from. And I might have been the one who came from the furthest away, which is pretty wild. So I was involved in helping out with the Vision Council at the gathering, and really enjoyed that. They did a 10-day Vision Council. I was there for most of the days. And then towards the end, the crew that I'd been working with asked me if I would make a movie about Hopi prophecy so that they could share that with more people. It's on the last day of the council. It was held in a teepee just off the main circle for most of the days, and anybody could walk in and out and be part of it. But then on the last day, it went out into the main circle. And I'd found this really cool board, this big old board like this. It was really thick. And I drew the inscriptions on the prophecy rock. And part of the vision was telling people about that prophecy. And the folks loved it. They really loved it. It was really important to them. And they asked me if I'd make a video and send it to them. So I'm excited because this will be it. As well. And a lot of people in Europe really appreciate and honor Native American ways because a lot of them have kind of lost their own traditions from way back when. So, they have some elders that they can learn from, but they're really very much appreciative of the traditional lifestyle and way of being, and are really learning that. And just like us here, sometimes things happened where people are culturally appropriating another culture and not realizing that's a negative thing, thinking that they're doing out of appreciation. But you have to be very, very careful of that. And up at Standing Rock, there were Hopis who came to Standing Rock. There were many, many different tribes and bands of people. I was up there for 6 months helping out with the Chetty Saquin media crew and the distribution of the humanitarian food aid from Organic Valley. A big semi come in every 2 weeks. And one of the camps we had is called the Southwest Camp. And a lot of the tribes from the Southwest camped together. It's this great, great camp. And that was neat. Hopi, Dene, Yaqui, a lot of different Southwestern folks camped together in one camp. So, you got any questions? Any other questions, Henry?
No, just, is there anything else on that paper that we wrote down some notes that you want to talk about?
Well, on the prophecy rock, the little old man who is planting the corn also looks very much like the Kokopelli. And this is one of their kachinas, one of their symbols. And the Kokopelli is an old man, and he's bent over, and he has a planting stick in his hand. And on his back, he has a sack, which carries seeds.
Well, you want to hold up the paper, and you drew a little caricature of this Kokopelli.
Yeah, it's not a very good one, but it gives you the idea.
There he is. Okay.
So he's called the humpback flute player, and he represents
The humpback
flute player.
Humpback flute player. Okay.
Right. So
what language is Kokopelli? Is that Hopi?
Probably so. Yeah, I would think it is Kokopelli. The Hopi language is really incredible. I love it. I wish I knew it really fluently, but maybe I'll get there one of these days. But so the Kokopelli is the one playing the flute, so he represents beauty and music and dance and spirituality, and then the seeds on his back. And then with the planting stick, the traditional way of planting blue corn is to the man goes ahead with the stick and he points it into the earth, sticks it in 12 inches, and then the woman goes behind him and she has the seeds in her cheeks, and so she's moistening the seeds and also mixing the DNA with the seed, and then so she plants 2 seeds in each hole, a whole foot deep, because they dry farm, and that's where the moisture is, way down there. And Hopi blue corn, the plants are only about this tall. They're really bushy, and there might be 1 or 2 cobs on one plant, not very many, and it's almost black. In the beginning, too, this is part of the way back prophecy, when Masao came and explained all that and put all that on the rock, and there were other people from around the world that were called, and this was right as the different tribes emerged from the underworld. And he asked everybody to gather around, and he had this huge pile of corn, just a pile on the ground. And then he said everyone could choose their own piece of corn, and many people just like jumped in there and they picked the biggest, ones and the yellow ones and the, fancy ones. They were all different colors. And the Hopis just stood back because they're really very humble people. And eventually there was only 1 ear of corn left, and it was the Hopi blue corn. And it's such a good food. Such a good food. It's the blue corn is 17-18% protein compared to 10 to 12 for yellow or white corn. And it's just a beautiful plant. So this is very much connected with them all through the generations as the blue corn. And so, they live very humbly. And they also did 4 migrations. Grandfather Davis told us about 4 migrations.
Well, hold on, before we go on to this, now the blue corn, is this the same strain of blue corn that was given to the Rainbow family back at the time that the rock was found at the Rainbow Farm? Do you know?
It's very possible. So we'll have to ask Garrick.
Because I think when Garrick tells the story of that corn, that he also talks about it being blue, and a very drought-resistant strain he would talk about.
Oh yeah, it's deep navy blue. And one day I was invited by the elder women to go down into the arroyos with them to gather salt cedar, which is a plant that grows all along the arroyos, and it has these really fine needles. So they had a metal dish, and they built a fire under it, and then put the salt cedar in there and burned it to an ash. And at the end of the day, we gathered up, when it was dry or cooled off, we gathered it all up and carried it back to the village. And the Hopi women they make atole, like a big kettle of blue corn gruel or cereal. Very delicious. They grind the blue corn with stone, and um, the atole, they cook that up in a big pot for the family, and then they take the ashes from the salt cedar and put it in the little cloth bag, and then hang it into the atole down inside of it, and it turns the blue corn purple. It's a beautiful shade of purple, and it also uh, puts in a lot more minerals and iron, especially good for the pregnant and nursing moms. So this is so ancient, their way of life and how they've done things for so many years. The Hopi community is the oldest continuously lived in community on all of Turtle Island, including Canada. So,
Okay, what was the next thing that you were going to talk about when you finished with the blue corn?
well, I was describing the Kokopelli.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we pretty much covered the parts that I thought were most important. Did I already say about that Grandfather was planning on coming to the '79 gathering? Is that on tape, or did we?
Yeah, you already talked about that,
Okay.
and that he couldn't come because one of the other elders had passed.
Yeah,
and
they
he
were
couldn't
doing
leave.
ceremonies. Oh, I know what it was. Well, thank you. So in '87, they decided that they would move Grandfather David and his wife out of the village onto the outskirts to one of his daughter's houses. She had a cinder block house, and she had converted to be a progressive. So,
she had converted to be a progressive?
Right. She was like getting into the whole, the more white way and eating terrible food. And all of a sudden,
Watching television.
I didn't see a TV there, but they boiled coffee in aluminum pots, and lots of sugar and different things like that. Unhealthy food, white flour, and it was really difficult for David. And then his daughter didn't take him down to the kiva every day, and that was really, really upsetting him. And this was after the last visit to the UN.
Now, Grandfather David is what, 103 years old at this point?
Yeah, 103.
And is he still, at this point, active? Where, I mean, he can get up and walk around? He wasn't in a wheelchair? Or...
No, not at all. His hips were starting to bother him, for sure, but he got around. He always had a walking stick that he used. Yeah, he was very active, very healthy. But then, because of the bad food that he was getting, the daughter called up my friend, Dr. Dave Milgram, and said, we're really concerned about him. He's starting to have seizures. Could you come and get him and take him to your place and work on him? So David called me up and he said, hey, could you go pick up Kwangwakwa'a, sweet grandfather, and bring him down to where I live? And he lived just
where did David live?
Just south of Flagstaff. So it's just a couple hours drive, this Hopi land.
Oh, I see.
So I went up there, and I had a friend with me who was a nurse, and really nice brother. We were traveling together at the time, and it was great that we had a nurse with us, and he was the head charge nurse at the Harborview Burn Center, which is the best burn center in the country, and that's in Seattle. So that was great that I had him with me. So he drove, and I sat in the back seat with Grandfather. And he had a seizure right before he got in the car. And then, we got him in the car and bundled him up with my blanket that I call my Grandfather David blanket. And I sat in the back seat with him. And while we drove over to David's, he was singing and happy and, doing really well. And when we got there, like in an hour and a half, 2 hours, as soon as he got out, he started having another seizure. And David took care of him right away. And he spent 3 days with them. And the first thing he did was,
Should we take a break?
Yeah.